Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the next part of our International Social Media Day here in ITT-Dublin. The cameras are rolling, as you can see, and we are now moving on to the National Seminar Series part of today, which is a presentation funded by the Teaching and Learning Forum for the enhancement of technology in higher education. Funded this following research and presentation into social media as a tool to enhance the first year teaching and learning experience. As I said earlier, my name is Glenn Metha. I lecture social media in the Department of Management here in the School of Business and Humanities of ITT-Dublin. In today's presentation, I've been asked to introduce first of all, what the Teaching and Learning Forum is all about. The vision of the forum is it is a sectoral network established to enhance teaching and learning in Irish higher education organisations, aiming at championing, inspiring, developing, mapping, building, promoting, enabling and researching in the areas of technology in higher education. The National Forum is funding a national seminar series, of which this is the first one of many to be held here in ITT-Dublin. The purpose of the forum is to promote innovative, fresh thinking, from exemplars to national frameworks, from discrete projects to comprehensive change. And the theme of today's seminar is part of making the transition to higher education. And particularly what I'm talking about today, what I'm going to be presenting about, and indeed what Stephen will talk about later on, Stephen Howell from Microsoft, and the panel for the second half of the 2-hour seminar. We'll talk about how social media can help make the transition to education for school leavers and also mature students returning to education, and how it can help in education. In other words, how social media can make education, how we can disseminate information better to our students and can help the class dynamic. In a moment, I'll start by presenting on my current research into live tweeting in the classroom. So the transitions team of the National Forum is aimed at not just school leavers, but also making the transition back to college, or to college for the first time for mature students, which is extremely important for ITT-Dublin and the National Forum itself, as well as making that transition from education to work. And we pride ourselves here in ITT-Dublin, and particularly in the Department of Management, of creating industry-ready graduates, so that we give them the skills, we give our graduates the skills that are needed to make them employable as soon as they leave us, rather than having to go and do add-on or supplementary courses. And also we will talk about, or the National Seminar Series indeed talks about making the transition from, for international students, of which we've many here today, coming to study in a different country. These are the main themes of the National Seminar Series, but the one that I'll focus on in this next 2 hours, and the panelists as well, will be on making transitions to education, including the mature students, as I said. The second hour of the 2-hour will be focused on the panel, and my head of department, Dr. Phil Mulvaney, in about an hour's time, will moderate that panel, and our panelists will join me at the front to discuss social media's impact in education. But before we start on that, I'm going to give you a brief introduction, and I'll try and keep it brief, a brief introduction into my research into live tweeting in the classroom. Now, what's it all about? What's live tweeting, and why Twitter? Well, there's lots of social media, as you guys know. For those of you who study social media with me, you're very familiar with what I'm about to look at now. There's many big, particularly foreign American brands that we use quite a lot here in Ireland. The big dominant Facebook, of course. Twitter, one of the biggest in the world also. So why did I pick Twitter over Facebook for my research into live tweeting? It's because primarily of the public nature of Twitter. Twitter is by definition much more public compared to Facebook, which is obviously much more personal. And many of the other social media that I decided not to go with, once again, are much more personal. There is that sense of inappropriateness if an educator at any level decides to connect with their students at any level or any age via Facebook. Now that's for a discussion for another day, but that's one of the primary reasons why in this research I focused on Twitter, not Facebook, because it's more public and because it's acceptable and it's expected that students at all levels would be engaged with Twitter to keep up to date with key journalists, politicians, indeed celebrities and favourite bands, etc., but also news feeds on the topics that they need to be aware of for their education. There are many other social media brands. I highlighted the most popular in the world there, but we shouldn't forget there are newer or emerging brands that perhaps will, if we're delivering this same themed presentation next year would be the ones that we are talking about a little bit more. Some of these are quite new, some have risen to prominence in the last couple of months, a couple of years, or maybe a year and a half. Some of them have been, say, swallowed up by the big players, Facebook, like Instagram, and indeed many young people are leaving Facebook, in their millions in America, by the way, to join sites like Instagram and Snapchat and more modern sites. Suffice it to say that internationally there's many social media brands, some of which here in Ireland we've probably never heard of, and we can even subdivide our social media brands by conversation. Now all of these slides will be available on ITT-Dublin.ie/smart. In fact, they're already there, so there's no need to take anything down, and you can see this in more detail yourself in your own time. I know it's quite difficult to see there. Suffice it to say, we can subdivide our brands in social media by specific purpose of conversation. The social media that we use perhaps for chatting, online chatting versus online dating versus collaborative work versus sharing photographs or music or video streaming, etc. The main reason, as I said, I picked Twitter for this research is it's simple, it's easy to use, it is also more public, and it is not blocked in IT-Tala. Facebook, like many educational establishments and companies and organizations, Facebook happens to be blocked by a large proportion of educational establishments and companies because they don't want their workers, or indeed in college, they don't want their students keeping all the computers busy with Facebook. This also happened with Bebo and MySpace maybe 7-8 years ago. Twitter, because it's encouraged by lecturers that students follow specific Twitter feeds, is not blocked in IT-Tala. And that was one of the other deciding factors for me choosing Twitter. My research into Twitter and into live tweeting is the use of it to increase student engagement with lectures and to improve revision. It was a simple idea. I wanted to see if, by encouraging students to live tweet in class, it could help them be better students. I don't mean better behaved students, I mean to learn more, to remember more, to have better exam performance, to be more engaged in class, to contribute in class, particularly for the shy learner, and to develop a range of skills that our research, as part of the Department of Management's research 2 years ago into our programmatic review, found from industry and other stakeholders were the key skills that were demanded by employers of business graduates, and all graduates needed the similar skills, but I was involved in the business graduate research. So the aim is to examine the use of Twitter as a collaborative learning tool and revision aid within the educational environment, and to determine if microblogging in the form of live tweeting can effectively develop students' key transferable skills for the workforce, as well as improve assessment, revision and learning as a whole. Now, live tweeting involves simply, while the students are listening to a lecture in class, they tweet, they summarize through their smartphone devices or indeed through a tablet, and we provide 2 iPads for this to our students. We pass them around for those who don't have a smartphone or don't wish to use their smartphone. We have Wi-Fi enabled iPads which students use, and they are encouraged to summarize everything I'm saying, and that's the idea of live tweeting. This is not unique to education. It's quite common, as I was telling some of our colleagues over lunch just an hour ago, it's quite common in the entertainment industry in the United States, where people going to the cinema or theaters for plays on Broadway, for example, would be encouraged to take out their phone. It's my idea of hell if we go to a movie and somebody's on their phone and annoying you. Don't know about you, but that really bugs me. In America, it is encouraged, but not in the entire auditorium, only in what's known as tweet seats, where new shows on Broadway or any other theaters, and also new movie shows when they are released in the cinema houses in the United States, they encourage people on a certain number of rows in a certain part of the theater to take out their smartphones and tweet using a designated hashtag which flashes up on the screen in the cinema or is read out by the announcer in the theater to encourage them to categorize their tweets as part of the discussion. Why do they do that? It's marketing. It's digital marketing. They want to get a buzz about people talking about the show or the movie. They want to get people retweeting it, resharing it, and hopefully get the snowball or ripple effect. The ripple effect is something I talk about in my book, Infinite Ripple, the Social Media Revolution, and that's the idea of the ripple effect, the snowball effect, is to try and get people to talk about something digitally through social media platforms. How do we categorize these tweet seats, or indeed live tweeting in education? We give a designated hashtag. In today's social media day, we have a tweet wall, and this tweet wall, at the very beginning this morning, we asked people to use a designated hashtag, #SmartForBusiness, and all of the tweets appear in real time on this tweet wall. And that's an example of how live tweeting can help engagement, because people see what others are thinking about, and it is public, remember. The research approaches, I should tell you that this research is ongoing. It began last September and it'll be ongoing until next August. It's a one-year project funded by ITT-Dublin as part of the Teaching and Learning Fellowship of ITT-Dublin, of which I'm one of 4 Teaching and Learning Fellows. And this seminar here is a way to disseminate some of the initial findings only. The final findings will be presented only in August, September next year, and we'll keep you updated through the SMART website, ittdublin.ie/smart. Last semester, I tried this with the first year group from September to Christmas in the Learning to Learn module in the winter semester. They were asked, and they were told it was voluntary, by the way, they were asked to summarize everything I said during class, once again, to use their own smartphones, or to use the iPads which we passed around. The hashtag that was predefined, they were encouraged to use. The iPad mini and smartphones were provided. Well, the smartphones weren't, but most of the students had a smartphone. This semester, the spring semester here in IT Tala, we've expanded it to 6 more groups. One of them are here in taking up about 4 rows. That's first year in the IT management and computing stream, who study social media communications with me every week. And they might be able to volunteer some examples later on how they think it's going. But my initial research is based on last semester. The last semester I tried it with a module where there was no exam. This semester we are trying it with a variety of modules and not just first years. First years and third years in a range of disciplines are being encouraged to live tweet. Some of them are 100% CA or continuous assessment modules where there is no final exam. Others, there is a final exam. And one of my key areas I want to find out is the following. Is live tweeting more relevant if you have a final exam that the student needs to study for, where you have a list of tweets, of potentially thousands of tweets, that is a ready-made revision tool? I wanted also to find out, through the ongoing research, to find out how it contributes positively or negatively to class engagement. My live tweeting hypothesis is the following. So reading up about it before I put in my application for this research, my hypothesis was that live tweeting should develop students' multitasking skills. All of these skills are key things that our stakeholders said were demanded by our graduates of IT Tala, particularly business graduates. Develop their multitasking skills, listening skills, because they have to listen before they can live tweet, before they can summarize. And indeed, it does develop their summarization skills. It encourages their use of modern communications technologies, even if they have no desire to work in the ICT or indeed the social media sector. There's very few jobs in Ireland or elsewhere where you do not need to know information technology or information and communications technology, let alone need to have a working knowledge of social media. So it encourages them to develop these skills in modern communications. It should motivate group work and collaborative learning, because only if the entire class live tweet together does this project work, or if the majority of the class do it at least. It provides, why is that so? Is because it should provide a rich resource of database of hundreds or perhaps thousands of summaries of 140 characters or less. Another reason why I picked Twitter, it forces students to summarize down to 140 characters or less, in fact less, because they have to use a hashtag, of all the key points, which is then publicly available as a revision aid for them. It also drives buzz around the hashtags because they feel they are contributing to a conversation in a structured way. Entertainment, sports, popular culture does exactly the same. If you watch a television program, you will see a hashtag encouraging you to comment. In Ireland, the Vincent Browne evening talk show on current affairs has one of the most popular trending hashtags every day that it's broadcast and the following morning, and that's hashtag VINB, Vincent Browne. Why? Because we are encouraged to tweet using that hashtag so that we are part of a conversation. The X Factor, football games, Man United, Paris Saint-Germain, any of the big teams, they will encourage exactly the same. Use the hashtag to discuss things, to categorize it so that other people can get involved in the conversation. Research into social media highlights very clearly that if you use a designated hashtag, if you encourage people to structure the conversation by a designated hashtag, they are more likely to contribute, rather than them making up their own hashtag or indeed using none at all. One of the reasons why the tweet wall has been quite active today is because we gave you a designated hashtag for today, hashtag Smart for Business. Similarly in class during live tweeting. This collaborative learning and group work, the idea I was hoping would be the following. When it comes to continuous assessment or exam time, that there would be a publicly available, simple to access resource of tweets. Hundreds or perhaps even thousands of tweets. Now what good is all of that if there's information overload? What good is thousands of tweets? Well, Twitter will categorize them when you search for a hashtag based on the most popular. The students who are retweeting these tweets more or favoriting them or liking them or whatever the case is, and they are pushed to the top of the Twitter feed. So you get to see the most relevant ones as voted by students. So it is collaborative. Not always necessarily the most important tweets, but perhaps it's the funniest take on an item. My key concept was, if I'm getting the information across the students to prepare them for assessments and exams, even if the students take some ownership over that and do it in a funny way, while not being offensive or defamatory, I'm happy to let it take its own course. And I don't get too heavily involved in moderating it. After all, it is social media. Students should be aware of their rights and obligations when they make comments across social media. I do explain that to them at the start. That's what live tweeting is all about. That's what I aim to try and prove. What I'm now going to do in just a couple of minutes is give you my initial findings on live tweeting based on the survey of just one class. I mentioned right now there are 6 classes in this college, and we're the first college in Ireland that I know of trying this out. It is common in many other parts of the world, but it's a pilot project here in ITT-Dublin. My initial findings are based on the first year Learning to Learn class in first year Department of Management on the Management Degree and Certificate Programme from September to Christmas. Social media usage, 91% of the respondents used Facebook at least once per day. YouTube was second, Snapchat was third, Instagram was fourth, and Twitter was way down in 5th place before this trial. Many students didn't know what Twitter was or the benefits of it. In fact, many of them didn't realize that they could use Twitter in education. Facebook was number 1 in another question I asked them on their favorite social media. As we'll discuss later when Christina, Dean and I present social media trends, you will see that Facebook numbers are falling, not just in Ireland but internationally. But Facebook is still number 1 here in Ireland. 50% of respondents in the survey of a class of 36 respondents out of 42 in the class, so the majority of the class did respond. Half of them used Twitter daily, some of them only once per week and even less once per month. 3/4 of them did have a Twitter account before the live tweeting trial. When I probed a little further, they said we had an account but we didn't really use it or indeed know how to use it or what to use it for. 2/3 of the respondents saw Twitter as a beneficial aid in keeping up to date with current affairs, but just over half saw it as a benefit in education, before the trial at least. 87% have never referenced a tweet in a college project. 16% didn't realise they could reference a tweet or indeed any social media, whether it's a blog, YouTube, Facebook, Google+, YouTube, any of them. They didn't realise they could reference them as part of their assignments. In the Department of Management, we have a style guide which we updated just last year with the Harvard Referencing Convention on how you should reference a tweet, how you should reference a status update, a YouTube clip, etc., as they are widely referenced nowadays by our students. As for smartphone usage, almost all in the class used a smartphone. For those who didn't, the price was the key barrier. You're going to see that later again in the social media trends. That's the key reason why those who don't have a smartphone don't use one or don't have one. It's pricing. All smartphone users definitely use social media, with over 2/3 accessing social media via their smartphone on at least a daily basis. When probed further, some say they access it on an hourly basis via their social media. Not just for me, not for live tweeting, but in general they access it. Most respondents were asked to tweet once or twice, most from the iPad, but some from their smartphone. Most accessed through the Institute Wi-Fi, and most had no connection issues. However, some did say there was connection issues. And the biggest criticism of the live tweeting trial from this initial group was lack of a strong Wi-Fi signal, depending on the room we were in. This room has a Wi-Fi router right in the corner, so we have a good enough signal. But some parts of the college where we don't have direct access or direct line of sight to a Wi-Fi router, there's not as strong a signal. And that was an issue and perhaps a barrier to progression in future trials. Maybe we do need to have iPads that are 3G enabled or 4G enabled, so we won't have to rely on a access point. Half tweeted between 6 to 10 times during their allocated slot, which was 40 minutes, and some tweeted even more. And most remembered to use the hashtag. So that was quite high. I wasn't expecting most people to remember to use the hashtag. I should point out there was no marks going for this. This was completely voluntary, but everyone in the class took part voluntary because they thought it sounded interesting and there was a buzz around it. Most remembered to use the hashtag. All respondents felt the concept of live tweeting was well explained and they saw the benefits of it. Most have actually searched for the hashtags during the semester. In fact, over a quarter searched for it when they missed the class in order to find out what they missed, which was one of my hypotheses. Could this live tweeting be used if you missed a class, rather than calling, emailing, Moodle messaging, or going to the lecturer or one of your classmates the next day and say, what was covered yesterday in the class I missed? You could be lying at home, in bed, watching TV, sick of watching daytime TV, and decide, let's see what's being discussed in class so I don't fall behind. Take up your smartphone, search for the hashtag, and your classmates are keeping you informed live of what's happening. And over a quarter did this when they missed class so they didn't fall behind. 10%, only 10% used it for a revision. It should be noted, however, there was no end of semester exam. So the results from this current semester's trial should be more interesting, and I'm expecting to see a much higher amount of people using live tweeting for revision if they had an end of semester exam. Interestingly, 10% said they used it for the novelty effect. One person said it's the fact that ITT-Dublin is moving with the times and creating industry-focused students, giving them the skills they need for industry because they'd be expected to do this in their jobs. And 70% said they were posting to see or accessing to see what the rest of their class were doing. Very briefly, because we're going to pass on in just a couple of minutes to Stephen Howell from Microsoft. I know time is pressing on. Some of the skills that the students felt they developed because of social media. Well, here's all that applied. Almost half said their multitasking skills were developed. Similarly, their listening skills. 80% believed that their summarization skills were developed. At half, 50% said their communication skills were improved because of it. 72% saw a big increase in their social media skills, and 68% on their technology skills. 72% did say, however, they'd be more likely to live tweet if there was a final exam. That's some of the hypotheses that I'm testing with the current group of students today. 89% will be more likely to tweet if we gave them some marks. Again, with some of the groups in this semester, I am offering some bonus marks. Bonus marks meaning they are not being forced to do it within their CA, but if they do it, they have the opportunity to get between 3 and 10% extra on top of their marks. So that it's extra credit basically, and that has incentivized them to do so. Most respondents believe that the grade should be between 5 and 10. Before I saw these results, I had started offering between 3 and 10% bonus marks. So that's consistent with what the students were suggesting. I'm surprised they didn't say 50, 60% extra marks for live tweeting. It was an interesting point, however, that they didn't necessarily see that maybe they shouldn't get any marks for it because there are inherent benefits without giving them marks. Overall, 82% found the trial interesting. A further 82% would encourage other lecturers to try it, and mostly if there was an exam at the end of the module. The demographics, well, this is first year, semester 1 in the business degree program. And finally, the current trial at the moment is running with first year marketing, first year management, first year accounting, third year management, and they all have an exam at the end. And there's a current class who are here today, or one of the 3 classes I teach in social media communications for first year computing and IT management, of which there's 160 students, and that is running with them, but there's no final exam. That is a 100% assessment module. So the final results that I'll collate over the summer and present at various conferences, including here again in ITT-Dublin in September, will be based on not just the trial results from what I just presented in the winter semester ending Christmas 2013, but also these 6 classes that are currently engaged in the trial as part of the Teaching and Learning Forum. Something I'm very proud of, and I should say the students did the work, so I can't take the credit, but some of the students who are sitting right here now today managed on the 12th of February to get ITT-SMC, the top trending hashtag in Ireland for that day. That day happened to be the day where we had the worst storms in 25 years, so at 8 o'clock that night, probably because power started going out, that was knocked off the top spot by storms, and that became the highest trending hashtag in Ireland. What this means is more people were talking about hashtag ITT-SMC, social media communications, in Ireland than any other hashtag for 8 hours on this day, which boosts the rankings of the college, of the research into social media. It shows the class in a very positive light, and I can't take credit for this. The students really got into it, and they're the ones who live tweeted. And one student during the class raised their hand and said, "Just to let you know, we're trending." And I said, "Yeah, come off it." And he said, "Yes, we are." And we got to number 10, 9, 8, and we rose by the end of the class because they were spurred on themselves. I said, "Well, let's try and get it trending number 1. And within that 1 hour, 45-minute class, by the end of it, and for the following 8 hours, it was the most talked topic in Ireland. Little country as we are, that's still a major achievement that the students did, not me. I just set the framework, they took it away. So it can tell you now what live tweeting can do. If the students get on board, it creates engagement. For 8 hours after I walked out of that class, those students were still talking about things to do with social media and live tweeting for 8 hours after I left that class, until those horrible storms took over. And we had people from all over the world, particularly in Ireland, journalists included, asking, what the hell is ITT-SMC? I didn't respond. The students explained it to the people, including journalists, what this was all about. So I was very, very happy about that. It also created competition between the groups, because I told the next day's class, I said, you can't let that group win. This group here, 1B, who actually got it live tweeting, I said the next day on Wednesday, you can't let that group win. Let's try and beat them. And they tried, but they haven't since. So it creates competition. Okay, that's me finished on the first part of this national seminar series. I'll take a couple of questions perhaps on live tweeting. So Brian Mullen, our AV guy here in ITT-Dublin, is asking, was that live tweeting, the reaching the top trending position a normal situation, or was there any abnormal factors to take into account? The answer is, I actually don't know if it was because there wasn't much else happening in the news. If it had been a day where there was a major report announced, a major government controversy, or if those storms had come in 6 hours earlier, would we still be able to say that we were trending for 8 hours as #1 in Ireland? I don't know. It depends on whatever is in the news. So on a slow news day, it is possible in a small country like Ireland to get things trending. All you need to do is get a certain number of people behind you and get the snowball or ripple effect. We had 55 students in the class together with me, and their classmates and friends joined in, and lots of people asked, what's this all about? So 55 were the initial students involved. Now 55 people can get something trending in a small country like Ireland, great. That's got a lot of potential for business and marketers. If there happened to have been big news or press releases or something important on that day, would we be pushed out of the top 10 trending? Perhaps. Maybe we got lucky. And we have not managed to replicate that since then. Yeah, sure. There were 42 students in the class, and I think 36 took part in the research. Now that was just the one class, as I said at the start. I'm just giving you the initial findings of the first class. This semester, there's about 400 estimated taking part in the trial. So when I add those 400 to the initial 42, we'll have a good enough sample that I can analyse over the summer and have more concrete figures for the summer or for September, which I'll be presenting again.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, Phil?
Do you think it creates a herd mentality, though, sort of a group thing?
Yes. So does social media, or does live tweeting create a herd mentality? Social media in general can create a herd mentality. I'm speaking next week. Pat Rabbitt is the Minister for Communications. He asked me to speak next week on a town hall meeting on the negative side, the dark side of social media. And the herd mentality, cyberbullying, privacy issues are some of the things I'll be speaking on. And social media definitely creates that herd mentality. You can look back at cases like, in very public cases, the Lord McAlpin case in the UK, where people just jumped on the bandwagon, so to speak, and automatically thought this person was guilty of something he didn't he didn't commit. So in large-scale large-scale cases such as Lord McAlpin in the UK, or indeed small-scale cases like 55 students in a class having an opinion on something, the herd mentality I have found certainly does kick in. Time for just one or two more before I pass over to Stephen. And remember, when we have the panel discussion, you can feel free to ask any questions on social media and education. Ellen?
Do you think there are any faculties or any departments where this wouldn't work?
Okay, so are there any departments or faculties where live tweeting wouldn't work? My initial hypothesis was that rather than specific to faculties, I wasn't sure if it would work if there was a non-theory based subject. So in maths, for example, or practical subjects, I'm not sure how appropriate this would be. I asked some lecturers to take part. Some of them were economics, some of them were accounting lecturers, maths lecturers, and I said, maybe an extended trial later could add in non-theory subjects. But my hypothesis is that for theory subjects that allow people to distribute theory, to retweet theory, is going to be more appropriate. Having said that, one of my colleagues, and I've had a few colleagues who have been very good to be part of the trial, we have Jerry Phelan, we have Peter Geraghty, and I have Gary O'Regan. 3 lecturers that have been good enough to be part of it. Jerry Phelan is an economics lecturer, and he gave out a formula, and this was a test to answer exactly that. He gave out a formula and encouraged students to live tweet for those who weren't there to explain the formula. It was one of the best engagements and one of the most remembered formula. He said on the initial discussion in class, most of them seemed to get the formula. Now that's hearsay from a conversation with Jerry Phelan. I'll have to investigate and research to see how relevant that is to the hypothesis. But I believe personally from the initial research is that on theory subjects, no matter what faculty or discipline, on theory subjects this can work. Whether it can on non-theory subjects, practical subjects, that's another matter. I'm not sure. We'll have to wait to see. Okay, guys, we're going to feel free to ask questions again when we have the panel. But for now, I'm going to pass over for the next 30-35 minutes to Stephen Howell, Academic Engagement Manager for Microsoft. He is also a former lecturer here in ITT-Dublin, and he's been good enough to come in and talk to us. So I'll pass over to Stephen. Thanks, Stephen.
My name is Stephen Howell. I used to lecture in this room a lot, but I've since moved to Microsoft, where I'm an academic evangelist, which means I go around schools, secondary schools, primary schools, but mostly colleges, and lobby at government level to get STEM, or science, technology, engineering and mathematics, into the classroom. And that includes everything from teaching young children problem solving and communication skills with technology, all the way up to computer programming at university. So what I'm talking about today is, I noticed when I came into the building, well, 2 things. One, that I was woefully unprepared because I thought this was a different session I was coming to. But then I saw the signs all around the college, which is really excellent, that Glenn and the team have put up, which says this is all about the first year social media experience, which I think is excellent. So I thought, while I was sitting at the back there, let's do something practical. Let's make an app now for running on your mobile phone, which would enhance the first year experience for first years coming into ITT-Dublin. Now, I know that the audience I have here mostly isn't computer programmers. I recognise a few computer programmers here. It's excellent to see you. But most of you, let's be fair, aren't hardcore nerd computer programmers. That's not a bad thing. There's still time for you. You could become one in time. But assuming that you're not a computer programmer right now, you may still want to have the ability to say to your first years or your clients, if you're not going to be a lecturer in the future, here is an app which allows you to consume what I want you to consume in terms of marketing or the social media experience. So Glenn said some very interesting things about, Facebook is blocked, and sometimes you don't necessarily want them to consume everything that's on Facebook. We want to, define the particular content which they're consuming. Now that doesn't mean you stop them going home and consuming whatever they want. You can't control that. But when it comes to what they are consuming in the classroom environment with your app, then you can define that. So I did a few searches while I was up there, and this is what I found so far. ITT-Dublin has an RSS feed on its website. If you don't know what an RSS feed is, it's a really simple syndication. It's a way of publishing news stories from a website out to whoever wants to consume them. Can you guys, I have a very strange accent, so if you don't understand me, it's not your fault. And I also speak very fast, so if anyone doesn't understand me, tell me to slow down. So when we look up here, this is all the news that's currently on ITT-Dublin's website. And it's all news that someone, I don't know who, but someone in the communications office has published. And there's other RSS feeds as well. I believe the Celt have one, and there's different feeds. But I've picked this one because it was the first one I found. Then I went and I found ITT-Dublin's Twitter account, but I can't actually consume that as an RSS feed. So I've used a third-party process which converts a Twitter feed into, again, RSS. Then I went off and had a look on YouTube, and I found that there's an ITT-Dublin 2013 YouTube account that has lots of videos, and it's got great stuff in there, mechanical engineering and all sorts of things. And I want my students to be able to see those videos. I don't necessarily want them to see some other videos on YouTube. So I've defined exactly what I want them to see. And then I went on, I saw a lady there, I don't know your name, but you're in the pink there. Ellen? Hello, Ellen. So Ellen I saw, because I was behind her, and I was looking, I could see that she was on Facebook, so I thought, oh, that's probably an official Facebook, because no student would ever be on Facebook in a non-official capacity. And ITT-SU, so you're obviously the Students' Union President or Communications Officer or something. So that was excellent. And then there was ITT-Dublin's own account. So assuming, now that took me, what, you know, how long was Glenn talking for? So that's what I did while Glenn was talking. I was paying attention as well, Glenn. I know there's a test. So, oh, there's no test, it's excellent. So what I have here is just a set of diverse products and services from different companies using content which has been published by various different people. And I don't want to say to my students, now, you better go to Twitter and remember to check YouTube and go on to Facebook, but not while you're in here, when you get home, and all that stuff. I want to have it that they load up one app, which I give them, probably for free, and has everything that I want them to know, and it updates automatically. And I don't want to hire a programmer because I'm cheap. Okay? So that's the scenario I'm presenting to you. Does everyone agree and understand what we're trying to do? Yeah. Good stuff. So let's make that app. So there's a free project called App Studio, which is available for Windows phones. And App Studio, it's all fitting on the screen there. It's a little bit cut off. So I'll resize my screen. Tell me when I'm all on the screen. How about there? Ah, look at this now. By the way, because you're Twitterer people, and I love Twitterer people, I'm Sarog, which is a Gaelic term for wildcard or anything and everything. So that's why I used it, sort of everything and anything's up there. A lot of my tweets are about, you know, crazy things my kids have done or are doing, you know, sometimes in the process of doing it. But mostly it's about education stuff and technology. So I'd appreciate a follow or a tweet or a mention or whatever you like to do. Now, so back here, let's make that app. And because my time has been cut down, I'm going fast. So I want to make a new project. I'm going to scroll out here a little bit because the screen is quite small. And in starting this new project, I already have gone away and gathered the information I'm interested in. So when I start off with my empty app, it's really a blank app. And it's going to end up giving me two things. One, it's going to give me a phone app for a Windows phone. This is a big Windows phone. There are smaller ones. In case you're wondering, am I a really tiny person? This is a normal size phone. This is a phone. This is a phone tablet, a phablet. And I didn't come up with the name, but it's quite good. This is the largest Windows phone. There are smaller ones. And it's also going to give me a Windows 8 tablet of any make app ready to go. So you don't have to have a Surface. It could be a Dell or a Lenovo or a HP or whatever it is. And it'll run on that. So this will be quite cool because I want you to stop me if you see me doing any programming. Now, I know there's going to be some devastated first-year computer science students here saying, well, that app's kind of removed our job. Well, it hasn't. This does the groundwork, the initial stages that you can do without the programmer. It also gives you the source code or the underlying DNA of the program to bring to the very expensive programmer. You know, like Fernando there at the back, and say, Fernando, I'll pay you €1 million if you just finish this app off for me. But we're not going to do that. Sorry, Fernando, we just don't have the time today to pay you. So when we click create, it actually creates a blank app with nothing in it. And because it's for first year IT Tala, we're going to call it IT Tala first year. I probably should have written first year. They better change the logo as well, because the logo is just blank, and there's a pen and a book. That looks good. Maybe you could go with coffee and newspaper. No, maybe not. If we had pillars in IT Tala, I'd pick this one. It's kind of like IT Tala there, that icon. But I kind of like this one. Like, it looks like you're hard at work, you know. So we'll go with that one. So that's our logo sorted, and of course I could import the real logo, but I didn't think of doing that. So then we go down here, and you'll notice that I have several different sections available to me, and these are the different types of content I want to include in my app, and I have a maximum of 6 to include. Now, I already mentioned RSS feed, so I'm going to include a few of them. I have just plain HTML, and if you don't know what that is, that's just static content like words or images that I want to include. So they'll appear in the app always, but they're not updatable. They won't live update. RSS will. YouTube is what it sounds like. It's a list of YouTube videos on a particular user. Flickr sounds like it is. I did try to find a Flickr account. My photographer friend up there, I bet you have a Flickr account, and it's got gigabytes and terabytes of photos, but I couldn't find one for IT Tala, and I couldn't ask you in advance. Then a Bing search, it can be a news, weather, or just plain web search, and then of course Facebook, which is the one you guys would really be interested in. So what I'm going to do now is very quickly, because Glenn tells me I'll be in trouble if I go over, is I'll start with a HTML section, and I'm going to call this About. And down here I can type in absolutely anything, and because we're in a hurry I'm not going to do a lot. You can type whatever you want in here, and you'll notice that if you've done a bit of HTML, and I think nearly every student in the world now does a little bit of HTML somewhere. I remember a time when Mary and I were the only people teaching HTML in the whole college, and now it's sort of a standard thing. But what we'll do is we'll say this is the IT Tala first year experience social media app, and we say confirm. So again, you would, if this was a real app, put a lot more content in there, but you can see it's already given me a preview of what it will look like. It's a little bit Darth Vader, black and white. We might want to save that and change the colors before we go on. I'm going to pick light blue, because I'm going to pretend that that is the colors of IT Tala. I can go with a light theme, so it's black and white, and I can go on white and black. But to be honest, I like this blue and white. I think that's nice. So I can also put a background image, but we're in a hurry. So if you're into your design, change the colors to what you like. So I'm going to come back into our content now, and our content is updated to look like how it looks with our new theme. And then I say, well, okay, we want some of these RSS feeds. So I select RSS, and looking up here at my, my news feed, this is the most important RSS feed I'm going to have. So I copy and paste that particular URL, Uniform Resource Locator or web link. So that's it there, itt-tala.ie/RSS/news/index.cfm, and the section name, I'm going to call it news, because that's exactly what it is. And I can call it anything, but news is good because that's what it is. Now it will go away, pull down that data, and show it to me here, and that's the data already in there. Now you'll notice that whoever is updating that, and I don't know who it is, but someone is updating that website, that RSS feed. They could be in this room, I don't know. Margaret, you probably know who it is, I don't know who it is. But whoever it is, sometimes they include pictures and sometimes they don't. So you'll notice that the app has determined that sometimes it should put in a picture, a Coder Doja in IT Tala, and sometimes it's a no picture found. Now I have a choice here. I can go away and say, never show the picture, because it doesn't look good when there's no picture there. Or I can say, well look, the user will understand, sometimes there's pictures, sometimes there isn't. Following that, I save that, remember to save. I say, well, I'm going to add a Twitter feed now. And remember I told you I had to use a third-party service to convert that Twitter feed, but I've already done that, and it's very easy to do, you just paste it in. So I say, look, I want another RSS feed, only this time I'm going and call it Twitter. And again, if Glenn was making this for his own students, Glenn, of course, would probably have a different Twitter account. I'm just using IT Tala's standard one. Same for all your students, you would use your own Twitter account. So again, we paste that in, confirm it, and hopefully it will go off and pull that in. So now we have the news, and there we go. Now you'll notice that there's no pictures in that Twitter feed. So this gives me a good opportunity to say, well, we need to edit this a bit. And usually that means programming, but not so here. When I click edit, all I'm going to tell it is the way to display the information which comes back needs to change. Currently, it's a headline and then the actual tweet and a picture. And I'm going to say, no, there's no picture, so select a different layout. There's the layout. And that was easy. And I click Save and go back. And the next one we had was YouTube. And you notice I'm going quick here because I'm afraid of Glenn. But when we were creating all these content, I'm not actually doing any programming here. If you think that's what programmers do all day, I have bad news for you. The reason we pay them lots of money is because it's harder than this. But this is a quick way for you as a non-programmer to create an app and actually have it ready to go. And can I just say that we have done this experiment using this tool, App Studio. We've done it with UCD Smurfit Business School digital marketing students. And we've done it with DCU's marketing students who are postgrads as well. 300 apps were created just by students using this tool, and they're all about tourism apps. So they didn't need any functionality from a computer programmer. They could create this simply by using the tool provided. And if they could do it, there's absolutely no reason why every student in this room couldn't create their own apps too. Now, following along from that, all I need from this is the particular name of the user. Are you looking for another photo, sir? Do you want me to pose? No, okay. And no posing, fair enough, you know. So now when we're adding in YouTube, it automatically asks us for the section name. I'm just going to call this videos. But we also have to tell it whether it's a user. Yes, it's a user, and here is their, okay, I obviously didn't cut and paste that right. It's ITT-Dublin 2013. ITT-Dublin 2013. And when I confirm that, it should pull in the YouTube video feed. Now, it doesn't just pull in the feed, it puts in the logic behind it so that if I click on that on my phone, it'll load the video and play it, which usually is a couple of lines of code, but I don't have to write them. And that's what we want to keep in mind here. We are reducing the sort of, there we go, it's the video with the headline, a bit of content, and a little thumbnail. And this makes life very easy for us. And of course, finally, our Facebook ones. Okay, you have to get my good angle. I don't think this is my good angle. So when we go for Facebook, cancel, we'll save. So will we do the Students' Union or ITT-Dublin, or both? We'll try both, okay? So ITT-Dublin's Facebook name is ITT.Dublin. And when we come over here and select Facebook, we'll call it FB IT Tala. And the page will be like that. Now, I haven't done it like that. Page found. Confirm. Did I did. Now, when we go over to that, hopefully it'll show us the Facebook information. And if you're on that page, you can tell me if it's right. Does that look right? Ken Carroll from ITT-Dublin meeting Professor Patricia Cardoso. That looks right to me. I'm not on the page, but sounds right. So I could add it in Students' Union now, no offense. But I'm afraid of time here. How am I doing for time anyway? Glenn has left the room. He's so upset that I've gone over time. So when we click Save here, I do want to show the next bit. So at this point, we now have an app designed. It has several pages I can swipe through. Each one has got different content. And it's using what we call a pivot format so that we have multiple pages on a horizontal row, but we can scroll up any of those. So we have multiple different sections. So I'm not going to do anymore. I'm going to click Finish. And at this point, it's now saying, well, are you happy with your app? Is that your whole app ready to go? Yeah, I'm pretty happy. I want to test it out in a real phone, though. Okay, and this is where it gets really cool. Because Glenn mentioned that a smartphone is what most people consume it by. Now, the cheapest smartphone you can get is probably one of the non-Samsung Android ones. I don't know, it's been a while since I've bought one. But the cheapest Windows phone is a Nokia Lumia, which is €80, a 520, which is about €80 off contract. Okay, so you can actually have a smartphone. Now, it's your starter smartphone. It's not going to have all the features that this monster has, but this costs 700 quid, so there's a difference between them. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my app on this phone, and I can put it on any Windows smartphone. And I'll show you how I do that. So, assuming I can get a phone signal in here. No, I have 4G, so we're good. So I click Generate, and I tell it I want a Windows phone app. And it goes away onto the cloud, onto the Azure cloud, Microsoft's cloud computing, which is actually in Sandyford, it's not very far away. And it actually builds this app and sends it back to me. So I don't have to have any development tools on my laptop. So there it is done. And it says, scan that QR code. I remember when QR codes were going to be all the rage, but this is the first time I've actually had a reason to use QR codes. So I'm now going to scan that. So scanning this on my laptop, I should be closer than that. And it's come up with the link. I pressed the button for the link, so please install that for me. And it's now downloading. Can you see that there? So it's downloading this app. Would I like to install it? Do I trust IT-Tala first year from Microsoft Corporation? Well, I do trust myself. So I click install. It will actually open that app and install it on my phone directly. Okay? So next I'm actually going to load that app. So I scroll down to I for IT-Tala. I'm just going to show this. You look like a very trustworthy person, Holly.
Okay.
Can you see IT-Tala first year there?
I can.
You can. So I click that to open. And here it is opening the app, and it has already opened it very quickly. And I have about, this is the IT-Tala first year experience. Swipe onto the news, swipe onto Twitter, swipe onto the videos. I'm going to load up a video. So here we click on the video, click on that, and it should open the video in a moment. I'll hire it up so you can hear it.
Hi, my name is Paul Walsh, and I'm studying mechanical engineering.
And sorry, Paul, but we don't want to watch you anymore. And the entire app is pre-built and ready to go. The only thing left to do is to upload this to the App Store, which you can do with a couple of clicks. So what we've done is we have created an app which we could give to a software developer who has computer programming experience like yourself, and you could open it up and edit it and change all sorts of things. Or you could say, I'm happy with it as is, stick it up in the Windows 8 phone store, and then everyone in the world, assuming you make it for free, who wants to can download it. So you could say that it would take about an hour for it to be accepted for, like it has to be checked to make sure it's not instructions on how to murder people or something. You know, once it's been accepted as a proper app, then you could just tell your students, this is in the store, get it now. Again, there's multiple different platforms you have to be aware of. There's all sorts of other platforms. Unfortunately, they don't necessarily have a tool that does this, but you can hire a programmer and say, that's what I want to go do it, how much will that be? But what I've shown you is that with a little bit of research, which I did sitting at the back there, I can find the RSS feed if it exists, the Twitter, the Facebook, the YouTube, the Flickr, pull them all into an app, have it ready to go on my phone and tablet, and it wasn't very hard, was it? You just saw me do it live, and we're finished, and it's done. Okay? And the really cool thing is you saw me just install it on my phone by scanning the QR code. And finally, if you look down here, you can see that it gives you the publish packages, what you would submit to Microsoft to publish it, and the source code ready to go. So, although I had intended to do something slightly different when I arrived here today, I'm only joking, I didn't mistakenly go to the wrong session. The idea I had was I would talk about how Microsoft uses social media in education, but I think it's more interesting to say how you could use it in education. Because this is about the first year experience. I didn't realize that because I never read my emails, sorry Glenn. And to me, it was more exciting to say, well, imagine you are a first year, you have first years. Imagine being given the app which condenses all the content ready to go. That doesn't stop you going onto the Facebook page and doing other things. Of course not. But it does give the lecturer a jumping off point to say everything you need is there. If you're not socially media savvy, everything you need is in the one app. If you are socially media savvy, off you go, do your thing. The next step I would say is that this is all content consumption. It's pulling down the data. It's not creating data. I think the next stage, what I would hire the programmers there in the computing degree would be to say, can you put in a new page where I can tweet, where it automatically adds in the hashtag? Or I can post to Facebook, but it automatically figures out or multiply posts it across the different Facebook pages it should be on, or whatever it is. Now, before I take questions, sorry, did my hand get in the way there? Sorry, okay. Before I take questions, I'm going to stand with my hands lower so that the photographer doesn't get a ruined shot of me going like this. When we talk about apps and social media, there is a trend towards all the providers of social media services to lock in the services within their own apps. This is often done for marketing purposes. They want to sell ads and things like that. Some providers are opening it up so that anyone can consume the services, but some are pulling it in very carefully. Now, there's good and bad reasons for both. I'm not criticizing them, it's just an observation. For instance, Twitter are very strict on how you can get tweets out. They prefer you to do it with their app, and there's limits on what you can do without it. Facebook are similar, but a little bit more open. You saw how you could pull in the Facebook feeds there. And then there are other services which are completely open. Here, consume the data, do whatever you like with it. LinkedIn is an interesting business one that I use mostly in how I engage with students. How many people here who were at my last talk in the college only about a week ago connected to me on LinkedIn after I gave out and said you all should connect with me on LinkedIn? So I know you guys did. So there's at least 4 or 5. So that to me is more important because I get a better view of a student because they're giving me the professional view they want of themselves. Twitter, unfortunately, like, you know, there's a number of my students who are great students and excellent programmers, but their Twitter handles are frankly embarrassing. You know, I don't need to see neck nominations on Facebook, you know, and if I'm a recruiter, that becomes important. It's funny now, but in a couple of years' time, your first and second years, you will be challenged if someone looks at your public history. So bear that in mind. With that said, though, I think social media is definitely a positive force. How am I on time, Glenn? I'm fine, excellent. I think it's definitely a positive force. When I'm using social media, I concentrate on LinkedIn and Twitter. But internally in Microsoft, we have a social media platform called Yammer. Now, Yammer is a product which we sell out as well, but internally, we use that as Microsoft's internal to the company social media platform. And Yammer looks like Facebook and it's very similar, but you can have product groups and teams, and you kind of have, it's an amazing flattener of an organization. Remember, Microsoft has 100,000 people in it, 2,000 of them in Ireland. And, you know, I don't know all of them, you know. So how would you communicate with the people you should be? Often they find you and you find them through Yammer groups, which are similar to Facebook groups, where you communicate in a way that is very, you know, democratized. You know, I can post and the CEO might post back. And rather than going, well, I'm not worthy to talk back to him, Yammer makes it that you can have that chat. Whereas I wouldn't email the CEO because, you know, I'm not important enough. But it's amazing to see that, especially with the younger members coming in who've probably gone through in the future Glenn's course on social media, they will see that the Yammer interaction is natural and email is a bit strange. And, you know, I remember when I worked in ITT-Dublin and I might go a week without getting any emails except from, you know, the odd student. Whereas now I'm getting hundreds of emails a day. And that's a big change because I was in an organization that email had come into. Now I'm in an organization that they're actually moving out of email more towards Yammer. And that evolution will continue. Okay? So I hope you've enjoyed my talk. I've been delighted to be invited here to speak to you, and you were a great audience. I can take questions. The question, I think, is that are we using social media, for instance, in multinationals like Microsoft in a way that's different for the common consumer? Well, I can't speak for other companies. I do know that some companies have internal, company-only, secret social networks. I don't know whose water I've robbed, but I'm drinking it. So, Yammer was a product that Microsoft purchased, which was designed for enabling social media in the enterprise internally. However, it doesn't have to be on the enterprise. Your local school board could use it to keep track of. Currently, people Shanghai services where the creator has an idea of what it will be used for, promotes it as such, and then discovers to their shock that it's not used for that at all. So for instance, I'll switch this back. For instance, when you are thinking about Twitter, Twitter was not originally designed for what it's being used now. Facebook was used to figure out who was single on campus. You know, I know some people still use it for that, but that's not, and that wasn't the only reason. I know. No, I've seen the movie too. But the idea is that when we look at how it's being used now, you have professional organizations. If you're in the photography club, you might run a Facebook group or page and keep in touch that way. And it's as soon as it becomes in a professional organization that you have to say, is it appropriate for me to be putting company information on Facebook just because it's convenient? Twitter is public, obviously, so you wouldn't do that. But imagine if you were to say a Google group. There's nothing wrong with Google and Facebook on their own, but if I post company information, especially in a third level college, I mean, Google Docs is great, you know, it's a wonderful product, but should I be publishing student results on it? And English lecturers have told me that they've been visited by what they call the information police, who say, we've discovered you're using Google Docs and storing student numbers on it, that's not allowed. And again, Kelt would give you better details on that than me, but the same thing worries us in Microsoft because we have a competing product, Office 365, and you know, are we secure? Are we making sure we're following every law? Are we making sure the information stays in Ireland or in Europe or whatever the legal requirement is? So it's an evolution which I think is hard to keep on top of, but generally if someone's selling you a product to do it, it's probably because in their mind it will fulfill the legal and security complications of what they're worried about. I think what you have to worry about is when you're Shanghaiing a product that Facebook have never told you to run your business on Facebook, but a lot of people run their marketing business on it. And you have to say, well, will there be other implications down the line?
So can I ask our panel, does social media have a place in higher education? Okay, there are a number of issues, I suppose, that we could look at there. Obviously it's important in developing digital skills for the skills economy, but that's quite a utilitarian approach. But in what other ways is it shaping education, or can it shape education in a beneficial way that will actually confer value, real added value?
Who wants to all jump in first?
I've talked a fair bit now, but I might just start it off by saying that I've found in class that in many of my classes, it's a if you can't beat them, join them approach, which is why I originally got involved in social media research. I was worried about the use of social media in education. I was worried about the use of social media in my personal life. I'm not a big oversharer of information, but I'm of the opinion that we need to have the approach to students that they expect. If they're expecting digital skills and to learn digital skills and to have the employable skills, digital skills, we need to engage with them while they are here with us for 2, 3, 4 years using these digital skills. And social media is just one of a range of tools, including like what Stephen presented on a few minutes ago. So I think that we don't really have a choice about doing social media in education. I think it's about how well we do it and how involved we get in social media in education. I'm not sure what some of the rest of the panel might think on that.
I think the how is the real important question here, Glenn, because even like you were given the live tweeting example there earlier, and I was initially thinking, great, good idea, works very well. Then I realised I got really annoyed at the cinema thing, people does tweet seats in the cinema, and I kind of got distracted from a large chunk of what you were saying, no offence, because basically I got really annoyed by that. As they're having conversations with Holly and a bunch of other people on Twitter during that, and it sort of did distract me from the main crux of what you're getting to. So like obviously it's good, but you kind of also have to pay attention to what's going on. And, it's like you were giving a very good talk, very interesting, but I was live tweeting this while I'm here, and I suddenly went off on a complete tangent. Like, so there's checks and balances to these things. Like obviously in certain amounts definitely very useful, but like as well, like just the overall benefit I think goes outside the classroom itself. Like, because obviously live tweeting in a lecture is one good example there, but it's really useful for collaboration. I know Stephen talked about Yammer a bit in terms of the business side of things, but even internally, the basic stuff you guys would use, your WhatsApps, your Facebooks, the likes, they're just quick ways to get hold of someone you're doing a collaborative project on, and it's basically a handier version in many respects than the old texting and phoning someone you're desperately trying to find them back when I was in college, about 15 years back. Because essentially you can get more rich data across. Like, so if you need someone to check out a video, check out a slide, it's much faster now than the email we'd have been using 15 years ago. So it's just easier essentially now to collaborate, and social media is a huge part of that.
Don't say 15 years ago. Emmett and I were in college at the same time, and I definitely wasn't in college 15 years ago.
I'm an old man, Holly.
You are an old man. Jesus, I'm not that old. I absolutely agree with Glenn in terms that we have to, use social media in education, because we use social media in ordinary everyday life, and education is part of our everyday lives. It's part of something that we do on a daily basis. If you don't learn something, you weren't listening. That's what my mum always said. And I think in terms of yes, absolutely, you do get distracted by, suddenly going off on tangents and people engaging with you, because that's what you find on social media. It's social, people engage with each other, and if you're doing social media right and are actually sending out good things that people are interested in, people will find interesting ways to get in touch with you and to engage with you on a particular topic. So exactly as Emma was saying, yes, we were having a little, bitch fight about, sorry, cursing. Not really, I hope not. I'm sorry, Phil.
I'm going to record.
We'll bleep that out later. About, people, the little blue lights in a cinema theatre, that would absolutely kill me. But similarly, as a lecturer, I wouldn't quite appreciate if everybody was off just chatting away on Facebook doing other things rather than focusing on a class that I was presenting. But in a similar way, I also teach social media, so in a way I sort of expect it in another instance. But it's about how we restrain ourselves as students to, be sending out good social tweets that are summarising good content, but not getting too distracted from what it is we're supposed to be doing in an engaging fashion.
Okay, so it's useful in subjects such as social media communications, obviously, and teaching digital skills. But is it useful in physics? I know, Nina, you teach IT, actually.
And one question I would bring it back to is the question I throw out. If you wanted to learn tennis for the first time, which approach would you take? Would you read a book about how to do it, or would you take up a tennis ball and a tennis racket and go out and play? Now, the answer you come up with, you'll fall into two groups. Some people, when they want to learn something new, they actually prefer to read the material, and other people are more kinesthetic. But an interesting aspect is, I think the majority of people fall into the kinesthetic area. What I think social media does, and tweeting, is it gets people physically involved. They're interacting with a new sense, and it gives them a sense of ownership. And I know myself as a lecturer, or somebody who's been at lectures, there's always the risk that after a certain amount of time your eyes glaze over and you're somewhere else. So what it does is it encourages people in a way that, say for example, when you break up the class and you ask questions and you try to wake everyone up and bring them involved again, by doing the tweeting, it's another way in which you can engage with your students and just bring their thoughts back to the lecture.
I found exactly the same in the live tweeting trials. I've actually found it goes a step further in that we have some shy students, particularly first years, of which there's many in the room here, who won't raise their hand and ask a question during class, but they will tweet. And because during the class, as presenter of the class, we don't have a tweet wall in every class. I won't get to monitor the tweets. Sometimes the students answer that question for each other. So the collaborative learning kicks in, where they actually explain something to each other without having to put up their hands. Now, I don't discourage students from raising their hands to ask a question, but simply, particularly first years, a lot of them are too shy to do so. So the online question asking through Twitter, or indeed through any social media, is a way that we can embrace those shy learners.
Okay, and
yeah, I think Glenn has touched on a very important point there. If you're thinking that the focus of today is about first year student experience, and all the research would point to the fact that the quality of the student-lecture relationships, the student-student relationships, are so important to retaining students and keeping them in the system. And I think the social media aspect adds to that, and in fact all the research would point to social media actually encouraging students to engage in their education experience, and as a result they will stay in the system, they'll actually stay in the education system longer. Kuh and all those constructivist theoreticians will tell you that this is really so important to the student experience and the engagement. And the point you raised about some students being more reluctant to raise the hand, and that's so important, that when you're in a group, particularly in first year, sometimes you can be reluctant to actually engage in the experience, and confidence grows through the social media, and it really, really enhances the quality of those relationships between both lecturer and student and student and student.
okay, so it facilitates engagement, and also it can increase motivation if students are talking about projects, and it can increase the pace of learning. What about our students here? What do you think? Or do you have any views? Or do you tweet?
Well, this particular class of first year social media students, they would tweet because they're part of my class, and it's a requirement. It's not a requirement, they volunteer to do it for the incentive of some bonus marks.
Okay.
But they may have some thoughts on that.
We're tertiary marketing, we don't really tweet, to be perfectly honest, but Facebook we find is really key, particularly in group work. We have a lot of pages, private pages set up so that we can interact with each other and pass information around. And it is a great way to find out what you've missed, and if you're stuck on something, if you're working on something at home, we find it a great way to get help and assistance from the rest of the class.
And do you use Facebook groups for that, or Facebook pages?
We've both.
You've both?
Mix both, yeah.
Which do you think are most effective in your opinion?
I think the groups are, particularly if you're working in a small group, there's less input and it's just whoever's in the group.
Any different functions as well? You got your notes and all that kind of stuff as well?
Yeah, exactly. We do a lot of file sharing as well through it, so that we can put our work together and review each other's work. So
yeah. Have you ever thought of setting up a separate private hashtag? Like, is there a private hashtag that we're not aware of today for Smart for Business? Because there's only about 10 people tweeting, but lots of people on phones. I'm just putting 2 and 2 together, possibly getting 5, but...
No, your man's playing a game up there.
Oh, is that what it is?
Well, most of the Dutch kids are hungover, clearly, they have a sleep like.
But is it possible that most of the tweeting actually is outside of class? Whatever, that their live tweeting may not be terribly beneficial, but it's the educational process that arises after class,
Well,
after a day of lectures. That's
just-
important.
I was interested in what you just said there about the groups, but it's private, and I think that there's a good reason for that. But also, just to combine it with the, well, maybe if everyone's live tweeting, they're not really paying enough attention to what's going on in the lecture, or not all at the same time, and things can be missed. So there's an interesting, the concept of a MOOC, a massively online course, the open online course.
That's
So
right.
one of them used Stack Overflow, which is very popular with computing students. It's a site where you can post a question on a particular topic, and popular questions get voted up, and then popular answers can be accepted as the correct answer. So it's an interesting way of crowdsourcing what's the important questions here. Because as a lecturer, I might think students are having trouble with X, but really they're having trouble with Y, and I don't know it because I had trouble with X back in the day, but not with Y, and so on. So imagine that you were to combine the private Facebook group with a site where all the questions are public to everyone in the class. So you don't post any information that you wouldn't ask in class, but at least this way you're not putting your hand up. And everyone can vote on, yes, I have that question too. So it's not a vote on this is a good question, it's a vote on I also have this question, or I already know that. And then the questions which rise to the top, Glenn goes, oh, I better answer that, because that's the one most people have pushed to the top, and then in preceding order. And the question at the bottom is one that maybe only one student had a question for. It doesn't mean it doesn't get answered, but the priority of answering is important. So you're combining the public and private.
I do exactly that in the live tweeting without using the technology you talk about. I do that on Twitter. I monitor offline, I suppose, after class. I monitor what the key topics are and the explanations. And if I see a student or a group of students didn't get the key concept or misunderstood the key concept, I'll make a note that the next time I see those students, that's what I start with. I recap that just to clarify. There was such issues regarding the CA and what's involved in the assignment. And there was a couple of people after class who were discussing it, and they actually got the wrong handle on something. So that was my cue to re-explain that at the start of the next class. And that's within the live tweeting thing, and that's how I got to monitor it. But there are other ways, like Stephen was saying, to do that as well.
Can I just rephrase, because you may not, for the recording. Your name, first of all?
Stefan
From
Ghent.
So we have Stefan from Ghent. And he makes the very valid point, which I'm sure we've all thought of, which is that tweeting is more of a distraction. That we talk about transferable skills and multitasking, but the reality is that you can you really do two things at the same time? People were watching the tweets, viewing tweets, half listening, and that this multitasking can actually decrease productivity rather than increase it. And most cognitive psychologists, I think, would agree with you, and that there are a lot of myths out there about transferable skills. And your second point, if you just what was your second point again? If you just shyness, yes. And again, the idea that treating can facilitate young people who may be shy to engage. But what you're really trying to do, I mean, another generic skill is communication. And that's part of a person's maturity, and in actual fact, people can hide behind technology. Okay?
I might quickly just add to that. I'm conscious that we're running short on time. The first thing, if I take them in reverse order, and I'll let the panel jump in as well, is that the shyness thing and business communication skills, I completely agree. But what we find here, and this idea of the seminar is about the first year transition, we find that for first years in the first few weeks, we are having big issues with retention and the literally being scared of a new dynamic coming from school to third level. So we found that not forcing them in the first few weeks to stand up in front of a group and present, or indeed to answer questions in front of the group, was appropriate. Now by probably week 10, week 8, 9, 10 of the semester, in semester 1, so the first 10, like week 10 of their first year, they will be standing up in front of a group presenting, but we build it up slowly. So the idea of the live tweeting, and at most of the groups is first year, is that we don't force them very, very early on to do things they're not comfortable with. In business, in the Department of Management, they do intensive management and business communication skills in second year. But in year 1, we do develop slowly. Secondly, on your first question. The distractive aspect. I found over the last few years that students were on their smartphones anyway. In class, no matter what. They were probably on Facebook, they were probably on Twitter. you can only tell them so many times to put their phone away. There were issues many educators, I'm sure, have at all levels, primary, secondary, third level, of phones being confiscated. Well, primary and secondary level, we wouldn't really confiscate a third level student's phone, but
You haven't been to my lectures.
maybe Stephen will. I haven't, but I thought, right, like I said before, what can I do with them? They're using their smartphones, they're using their devices anyway. How can I make that productive? And I haven't noticed a reduction in attention. In fact, this current year's of first years, of which there are many here, have the highest, provisionally, the first CA results, first assessment results, are the highest assessment results in 8 years. I'm not sure what correlations there are there, but they are simply the highest results. I will have to probe later to see if the Twitter feeds help them with revision. So it's not proving to be distracting.
But sorry, but Glenn, I mean, in schools in Ireland in second level, they do ban, you know, of the
But just
Facebook and Twitter and so
the
on.
key theme is
Right?
about the transition to third level, the
But-
first year series.
Okay, but we do have to look broader than that because technology is developing and the education sector is evolving with technology, but we do have to shape that process in a way that is beneficial to the learning process. So the critical thing is, are students really learning from the use of social media? Now, I think my own personal view is that there can be limited learning going on, that it could be more of a distraction in the classroom, except where you need up-to-date statistics or information. It's great for that access to the internet. That is necessary in the classroom. Having that link to a huge source of information is very enriching and fantastic and beneficial to us all. But if you think about it though, the use of social media in terms of that it can be used 24/9, the learning process can benefit from that. Stefan, did you have one other point that you wanted to make? No?
Yes, one more, but probably this is more anecdotal. I have students who discuss the questions of my exams from the previous years
Yes.
On Facebook, yeah, and I let them do it. But at a certain point, I got a printout of one of these discussions, and all the answers that they were discussing were wrong, and they distributed the wrong answers.
Exactly. So is it the blind leading?
Fabulous.
So Stefan raised the point of students discussing exam papers and answering exam papers that all of the answers were incorrect. So there can be a lot of ignorance as opposed to knowledge out there, and people can be very misguided instead of actually acquiring wisdom. And that's where the quality of the information that is being obtained and the content is absolutely critical. And this is why, I suppose, and a question to think about, a lot of social media can be a waste of time. Whereas what the lecturer is trying to communicate is good, scientific, well thought out information, not the latest fad, craze, misconception.
But Phil, I found it complete opposite. All my grades have gone up. In the 2 classes I've tried social media with the live tweeting with, one of them here in front of us, they have the highest grades so far. I don't know if there's other factors to consider, part of the ongoing research for the rest of the year.
Okay.
But that's
Glenn, that maybe that it was the module was about learning. Isn't that correct?
one of them was, but the other one is the social media
and the social media module.
And
So we would
further research
expect
needed.
that obviously the use of social media within that context would be beneficial. But if you were teaching physics or a history of philosophy, would you have had the same?
There's a few other lecturers trialing it, so they'll know by the summer.
Exactly.
Okay, maybe we can ask our students how to handle it all together in the classroom.
Okay, well this is I think that we have been moving on. The best approach is to managing it. How can we manage this disruption in the classroom? Any views from the audience or
I don't think it's a disruption because, as I said, students were using their smartphones anyway. I came up with a process by which they could use it constructively. I'm not sure if the panel or the students have an opinion on that.
Yes, but can I just say why, and I'm kind of devil's advocate here, do a lot of lecturers tell students when they come in, put off your smartphones. Okay?
I think
precisely because it's an interference.
I think there's a fear, sometimes a fear factor that, for example, students bringing in, there are many factors here at play. I think we're worried, as Stefan mentioned, about the fact that they're not listening to what we're supposed to be lecturing them on, number one. But the reality is that it's a tide out there, outside the walls of our institution, that they're used to. They're in this habit of coming in and having these many distractions, doing many things at the one time. Maybe not well, but the reality is that if any of us go to a conference or to a meeting, we're sitting there with our phones checking emails. We might not be letting people know, but we are. People are multitasking, so it's a wave, it's a tide, and we should decide how best to deal with it rather than resist. Because it's there, it's a fact, it's a reality of their lives.
Yeah.
So we either go with it and integrate it as best we can, and the answers for that are for us as educators to find by consulting with you to see what's best to do.
So we'll come back to that in a second, and I'll come to Emmett one for a moment. But are we saying then that we just allow people to become very unstructured, doing bits and pieces of several things at the same time, and not doing anything well or properly?
Well, isn't that
And as you said earlier, concentration. I mean, science requires concentration.
Yeah, well, like part of the whole college thing is learning how to actually learn yourself. It's not as structured at second level anyway. But also, even look at sort of the room here today. You know, it's like a whole lot of you are bored, and that's fine. But the difference is, 15 years ago, if you were bored, it'd be really noisy in here. You'd be all whispering to each other. Thankfully, you're texting and tweeting each other, so it's great. Like, you know, I see at least one really hungover guy there with slick hair over there. That's grand, like, you know, because he's not actually bothering anyone. He's just tweeting under the desk. But like, that's the difference between now and 15 years ago. It's actually easier for students who are paying attention. But again, like, going back to the original point I was making there, though, is the college learning environment. Like, part of it is a case of you've got to build your own structure. It's about it not being handed to you. So if you might go, well, it's disruptive, it's getting in the way. This case of it's like you're working out how you're getting along, because like the real world's kind of messy anyway. So if you're not sorting out yourself, it's not going to get handed to you. Trust me.
Okay.
Can I ask a question of the audience though, just really briefly? How many of you have ever been distracted by the PowerPoint that's happening behind your lecturer? Show of hands. Yeah.
A whole lot of liars.
I probably weren't reading it the rest.
However, have you ever been distracted by the fact that you were listening to something really intently and trying to take down as much of the notes, but you got so involved in the note taking that you forgot what the lecturer was saying as well? So again, it's exactly the same thing. You're all putting your hands, but it's exactly the same thing. You were as distracted by the lecturer as you are the lecturer's notes, what the lecturer is saying, what you should be talking about. And also, however, have you ever like live tweeted while watching TV? Do you ever watch Twitter and TV at the same time? Have two screens, the second screen as they're calling it now, and you're having conversations with people all over the world about the same show. The best thing ever coming up in May will be Eurovision. Honest to God, have Eurovision on Twitter and have wonderful tweet conversations with people while being distracted. But it's also about learning collaboratively as well as a group.
Okay. By the way, context might be important there. If you're in work, it's more important that you're concentrated. If you're just watching TV, obviously it doesn't matter, Mags from the Centre for Learning and Teaching.
Hi, I'm going to tweak this, but I say it instead. We're talking about lectures too much, and we're talking about Twitter too much. There's much more social media than Twitter.
I agree.
There's much more to learning about.
But we're looking at it in the classroom.
In the classroom, correct. But I do think we do also need to talk about what happens outside the classroom, because if we talk about learning, what percentage of learning happens in the classroom, and what percentage of learning happens outside the classroom. And the key role of the educator is to structure the learning experience. So Twitter is part of that structure, and social media generally.
Yeah. Like if you were to leave the classroom, you'd probably lose about 90% of what the person just said within about 2 days. So in order for you to retain as much of that knowledge as possible, you have all heard of the forgetting curve. As soon as you leave the classroom, your knowledge of that just goes down. The more you experience and practice what it is that you learn, or be able to revise what it is that you've learned, the better. And if you're doing things like making YouTube videos about something that you, as part of your project, or you're using Google Plus as a way of experiencing with different hangouts and different groups, or if you're using Yammer or Stack Overflow or GitHub in order to source code and collaboratively work together, there are so many different social networks out there for you to find your own niche and really work within that niche. And I think it's incredibly important that you don't just do stuff in the classroom, because you forget all of it. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, can I have a question?
Can I just say, student, like every one of our classes when we go into, first thing we're taught is to put our phones away. Every single class for the last 3 years. And I just kind of want to back up what's, part of the lecturer's job, in my opinion, and what we keep getting told by lecturers is to just facilitate our learning. So, I don't see what difference it makes to a lecturer if somebody is choosing not to focus on what they're saying and choose. It's that person's responsibility. Ultimately, it's their degree, it's their
It's not skill.
level of understanding.
Yeah,
So it's their, you know, we're being told on one hand it's our responsibility, our learning is our responsibility, but then on the other it's going back to a primary school or secondary school kind of phase where you're told, you know, you can't make the decision about whether you're going to focus in this class or not, and, you know, turn off your social media.
Well, it's not whether you're focusing, it's just what device are you using in order to focus. I mean, I could be taking notes on my phone because I forgot my iPad that day, or my laptop's lost its charge. Well, the only thing I have left with me is either a pen, which I'm terrible at handwriting, or my phone. So I'll just quickly take notes on my phone. Whether that's it's just the different devices you use to focus. And your own self-directed learning, which is incredibly important at third and fourth level. How you choose to go off on a specific tangent because you're really interested in this particular topic. You know, the next couple of slides, you can review the slides back on Moodle or Blackboard afterwards, and it's absolutely fine.
Okay, so our third theme there, which we've been talking about, is which social media are best for first-year students, Twitter or Facebook. Have you any further views on that? There
Definitely YouTube.
Problems with both, and
YouTube's
both
great.
YouTube, and like not within the class, but actually within it. It's great. You can actually show clips of YouTube videos to explain concepts, and particularly when somebody is totally new to a concept, there is a big value on going online and looking up the likes of Wikipedia and looking at YouTube videos. Ultimately, it won't be the last place you read, but if you sit down and read your course book straight away, it might be too much to take in. So I think there's a huge value in it. And in terms of going back to the self-directed learning, this is a key skill that you need within the workplace. The way in which, for example, management and leadership is going these days, it's almost in inverse. There's the concept of the servant leader. And the idea is that more and more we are relying on people, the individual experts in the team, to have that knowledge. So, for example, in IT, the graduate coming in with a few years' experience, they will know more about an area than the person managing them, the project manager. There was a time that wasn't the case. There was the time as the project manager you would know everything. So you are relying on people to have the skill of self-directed learning and also the ownership. And I think that that's what can come across when you change the relationship dynamic in the class, when you empower the students.
Okay. We'll move on then. How can institute marketers embrace social media to attract school leavers or mature applicants? So we're looking at the interface, I suppose, between third level and second level. And social media, you know, can can it, maybe it's not, be a useful tool for those students who are thinking of entering third level.
Yeah, I think it's already there and happening. I know, having had my own daughter through the process of choosing which university to go to, she used Facebook quite a lot to find out what's happening, what points are happening, what's the requirement, what's the experience, the student experience like. So it's already happening. So if we're not tapping into that and utilising that as an educational provider, we're really losing out. I talked to a group of Brazilian university visitors this morning, and we asked them what's the criteria that those people would choose where to go in the world when they're travelling, international study. And Facebook kept cropping up again, that they will actually talk to people about where you've been in the world, what's been happening. And we're spending a lot of money on marketing teams and so on, saying great things about come here because of this. They check it out on Facebook first, or they'll verify if that's a fact or what's happening, and they'll get the mean, the average. You know, it's like you go on TripAdvisor and you find out what's the best. They do the same equivalent for an educational institution.
So it can improve choices and therefore support retention.
It provides information. I mean, it is the TripAdvisor of the industry.
But
of the education industry.
can it be manipulated though?
Well, it's honest reviews. Well, it's reviews, whether they're honest or not, just like TripAdvisor or any other site. They're reviews, and they're peer reviews, so they're listening to the words of their compatriots who perhaps joined the college the year before, or the year before that, or perhaps have since graduated. But just like TripAdvisor, when you look at some of these staying in a hotel, it's up to us whether we trust them. But whether we trust it or not, whether we do it or not, this conversation is happening online. These peer reviews are happening, and they're certainly influencing the choice of which college to go to.
But would you say that one of the problems, though, with social media is the whole issue of censorship, for example? I mean, if you think, you know, globally, and manipulation of information.
Well, censorship, I think we saw a really good example there 2 weeks ago. There's only so much you can do, and Turkey tried to ban Twitter and YouTube. One of my side gigs, I run Europe's biggest English language basketball site. Do check it out. And all the Turkish guys who followed me had no trouble talking to me throughout that, because it turned out that it's really, really easy to circumvent a lot of these bans. Like, these weren't coders, these weren't guys with Stephen's level of training, even my level of training. These are ordinary people who are, who basically just got up and were really, really annoyed. They couldn't tweet, they couldn't go on YouTube. So the first thing they did was Google ways to get around it. So there's a limit to how much censorship you can do. Obviously, when you have mass state level stuff like in some countries, but if you're in a sort of even a reasonable level of democracy, censorship's going to have very limited impact. As we saw, the real Turkish upsurge, because the most tweets sent in a single day was the day Turkey banned Twitter, because pretty much the entire country said, no, you don't.
Okay. Stefan?
Just in addition to what was already said, we are using in my college YouTube to attract foreign students, mainly Erasmus students. So, for example, I cut up my course of international marketing in the basic concepts, just basic concepts in 5-minute movies, not longer than 5 minutes, because the attention span of people watching a YouTube video is very short. So students from abroad are already directed to that website. At this point, only the students who are already interested, and they can see how things are explained, how what the content of the course will be, and moreover, students who are already in the course can go back to YouTube and see how I explain certain concepts again, over and over again, until they actually understand what's happening.
Thank you, Stefan. You moved on to our next point, which was the experience in the home country of our visiting international lecturers. So, in your country, it has been very positive.
In my school,
in your
not
school,
in my country,
in your
we are
school.
the first to do this.
Okay.
So Phil, can I just make a comment on that? That's a positive, and I think that's good. YouTube is good at that. But one thing that would be negative is you cannot control the videos you might like on the sidebar of YouTube. Well, maybe you can now, but when I last used YouTube, you couldn't. And when I was at the back before I made this presentation, and I don't like mentioning this, but a lot of the videos when I was on the YouTube site, I think would be embarrassing if I showed them on the screen, because there were students on campus filming each other doing funny things. And sometimes there was alcohol involved, which is a shock. I mean, Irish students generally don't drink. But if I had shown that up on the screen, it would be embarrassing, especially because I'm being filmed with Swan. So my way of hiding that was having an app, and it only shows the videos that I want to show. Now, imagine you're trying to get an Erasmus student in Ireland to come to your college, and they see your excellent lecture, I'm sure they'd say, yes, I'd like that, and then they see on the side, watch us do something, embarrassing. It may or may not make them want to come to your college, and you can't control that.
No, I don't want to control that. I'm not Big Brother. Big Brother is already here. It's NSA, it's whatever it's called in the UK.
Well, I'm not talking about Big Brother, I'm talking about marketing.
I am Big Brother. Control beyond the imagination of what George Orwell wrote in 1984. Not 1948,
but that's,
in his book 1984.
That's not what I'm getting at.
I don't want to control what people see. The YouTube videos
you
about
do when it's marketing.
The Irish students who are lovers of are already there.
Guys, sorry.
Okay. So, just any other visitors here?
I was looking for the visitors, because we've heard from literally 2 people under 30 today, no offense. I'd actually like to ask our visiting students, because we've been about Twitter and Facebook a lot, but I'm pretty certain that isn't necessarily the main thing you guys are using. So just from our Dutch folks here, who would use Snapchat on a daily basis? Come on,
Instagram and all that.
or Instagram,
Instagram, all those.
Like what else would you guys use? Like what's particularly popular at the moment?
Popular?
What are the popular apps at the moment, basically, for you guys?
Because we're not cool, we don't know.
I'm old. Tell me.
Keep us in the picture.
We're not going to use them.
How many people
What, sorry?
from Holland are on Twitter? Okay, what you are posting on Twitter, the same content as on Facebook, or?
What else do you use apart from those? Like?
Well, probably the most interesting thing that we use at our university, and especially in our course, which is commercial economics from my part. And we actually have our own platform created by students, for students,
cool.
Without teachers and without supervising it. So it's all very objective from a student point of view. So
and you control over, right?
Summaries gets posted to it.
Yeah.
Obviously, also questions which were asked during tests for people who are going after them. With the answers they think, and people actually get involved. And you just get, at some point, you just get people correcting other people, saying, no, that answer is not correct, because in that book, page 2020.
That's also what you share with each other. It's
Yeah,
a wrong question or a wrong answer.
They don't think it's the wrong answer.
No,
They think it's the
no.
right one at the time, but they're correcting each other.
So it starts out with someone saying, well, I think it was this answer. And because there, at this point, there are probably 500 students being involved. You know, in the end, it's just the fact of the big numbers. And someone will show up with accurate literature and a good answer.
Yeah, but that's also kind of learning.
It is, absolutely, absolutely. It's what Mags talked about, the extension beyond.
The whole social media thing, and just, I think new learning in general is just that it's all on demand.
Yeah.
So for instance, when the Microsoft drop and drag thing was being introduced, I was kind of enthusiastic, and it's just that I don't have a laptop here, because otherwise I would be already involved in trying to make it, you know, right here on the spot while he was explaining it.
I'd like
himself.
students to follow me when I'm lecturing like that.
No, yeah, but that's just a new way of learning, and I don't want to.
Writing, yes.
Yeah.
I don't want to consume time with. I don't want to consume time from other people asking a question when I can look it up on some kind of other platform just by myself within a minute and not asking and then waiting for a response. Or no, this takes too long.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. But do you ever contribute to Wikipedia? Has anybody ever contributed to Wikipedia in this room? 2 people?
Anyone under 30?
3 people? Any women never contributed to Wikipedia?
We learned then that there must be a little bit angry about Wikipedia because everybody can say something.
Yes.
But
so the reliability.
But it's all learning. We all learn from each other at the same time. Somebody will be more correct than another person. But there are very few. First of all, about Wikipedia, there are very few women who ever contribute to Wikipedia. I think of all of the millions of Wikipedia pages that are out there, less than 10% of them are contributed to by women. So those girls in the room, can we go on Wikipedia and start correcting somebody's mistakes? But as we learn, as we really absorb stuff in the classroom, as we develop new research, if we publish something that we think actually now affects facts that are outside online, that people go to Wikipedia to find out the real answer, and if we know the real answer and we can explain it better, go onto Wikipedia and edit that page. If you're completely wrong, then somebody will fix it again after you. The Wikipedia police will come in after you. But it's a collaborative project. It is the biggest source of information online is on Wikipedia, and it's one of the biggest websites in the world. Absolutely get involved. As students, you can become educators and really get involved in that way.
Okay.
Perhaps one last point. I'm sure we're running short of time. I think personally that we don't have an option, as I said at the start, about engaging with students through social media, but it is how we do it and dealing with the pitfalls, the negative side, of which there are many, but also looking at the potentials, the positives of social media in the classroom, outside the classroom, after the classroom, in education, but particularly as the focus of this seminar was on helping to make the transition to education. And with that in mind, I think social media has a massive potential.
Yeah. Absolutely, I think I would agree with that. Are there, where to from here? Any final closing thoughts?
I think it's, no, it's not going to get worse. I think it's a fantastic challenge. It is a challenge. It's because it's changing so fast. But I do think that, I suppose, our biggest concerns as educators is that we want to create, if you forgive the pun, we want creative thinkers. And people mentioned some during some of the talks that we're consuming information quite a lot. There's a lot of consumption of content. And my concern from a humanities background, I suppose, is that we want more creative thinkers and we want people being critical thinkers and so on. And I suppose a worry that I would have is, so it's really about the challenge of how we can actually marry the two and use the technology to create those creative thinkers and critical thinkers that we want, but at the same time utilize the information and the media that is there at our fingertips.
Okay. So technology is really, it is a tool, and we know that sites can be managed, and there is a lot of valuable learning, whether it's in physics or mathematics or biology, that can be accessed online. And it's a matter of who you link into. You choose whatever the information or topics that you wish, but it is possible to manage that.
I just want to say, if Lex Bazzali is too nervous to ask a question today, feel free to tweet any of us afterwards as well. I just see you a bit nervous about asking questions earlier. Okay.
Who is Lex Bazzali?
Holly, any point from a recruiter's point of view?
From a recruitment, yeah, my day job is a recruitment marketer. I'm not a recruiter. I'll just put that out there. Stephen mentioned earlier on that having that some of your public photographs, videos, content that you post online that you would rather an organisation would not see, because recruiters might see it in a negative light. He is correct in some guise of that. You know, recruiters will look at your Facebook profile if they can't find anything else about you. So my advice for you from a recruitment perspective will be to give them good information. So start up a LinkedIn profile, get your LinkedIn profile all singing, all dancing, so that they don't have to go continue seeking information after that. You should be aware of your privacy settings on Facebook, but that's just for common sense. Don't post anything up on Facebook that, you know, is related to illegal things.
You wouldn't want your granny reading.
Yeah. Well, just because, you know, you can be like, nothing on Facebook is really ever private.
True.
Even the posts that you don't actually publish to Facebook are still recorded by Facebook. So just be conscious of social media. But nobody's ever going to punish you for, you know, being in a photograph with a can of beer. You know, we're all human beings. We all live lives.
But just on that, in America, a female teacher in middle school was, parents reported her, she was on holidays in Ireland, she went to the Guinness breweries, there was a picture of her not drinking but holding 2 pints of Guinness. Parent reported to school board, she was fired. So although no one in Ireland think would fire you for holding the can of beer, some places can be a bit, you know, strict about it.
Would you want to work for them?
That's a big question.
Hard to get on their job.
Yeah, but if you say you're sick and then through social media they find out,
That's different.
That's a very different situation.
Okay, thank you all very much.
Thank you.